Welcome back to another session on my Latin American, the Caribbean and Latin American News Now channel. Welcome back. And the title of our this afternoon's program, this afternoon's discussion is Washington's Secret Memo, U.S. Soldiers Above the Law in the Caribbean. And that is what we're hearing now that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and Trump's national security advisor is suggesting that the United States is above the law where the strikings of the speedboats in the Caribbean are concerned. He's suggesting that once the United States, in the name of national security, and the fact that it's fighting the war against so-called narco-terrorists, narco-traffickers, or whatever he thinks they are, he's suggesting that he has the law under his belt to go after these people and to practice extrajudicial killings in the region. Now, he's suggesting that all the soldiers who have participated and who have struck these boats are exempt from the law, that they will not receive any form of justice in the form of retributive, justice, the fact that they will be prosecuted under the law, that they will not be prosecuted. That is what Marco Rubio is saying. They are exempt from such prosecution. Now, that reminds me of and I've warned you about it, the status of forces agreement, that if you read Chalmers Johnson's book on the U.S. Empire, in which he documented the fact that in Japan, where the United States also has the status of forces agreement, and the people on the island of Okinawa in Japan, that they have gone through a lot of hell with U.S. bases domiciled on their territory, and that a lot of what the soldiers do there, including raping of the citizens of the Okinawans, they go scot-free. Many too have have crashed into buildings, have crashed into people, have, unalived people in Okinawa, and they too have not been prosecuted. So we're going to see the same thing happening perhaps in Trinidad and Tobago and other countries in the region, which have allowed the United States to set up bases in its war against Venezuela, that you're going to see lots of that happening there too, if the war should ever happen. Very important that the Trinidadians understand that it's not going to be business as usual. The effects of war are not pretty. And we must not think that the United States, we must not be bamboozled into believing that this is to wage a war against drug trafficking and drug traffickers. That is not true. That is just a given pretext for us to concede and to consent with the United States. And we cannot do that. We have now to begin to awake and to open up our eyes to the real agenda behind the war on Nicolas Maduro. And we don't have to be a friend of Nicolas Maduro to see that something is definitely wrong. A classified Justice Department memo revealed by the Washington Post shows that U.S. troops involved in deadly boat strikes across the Caribbean cannot be prosecuted. The document effectively places American soldiers above international law, raising new questions about the U.S. role and accountability in the region. As Trump's Caribbean operations intensify, even Washington's closest allies are beginning to distance themselves. Is this the start of a new phase of U.S. militarism or U.S. militarization in the Caribbean, or a warning sign of imperial overreach? In this episode, CLANN, that is Caribbean and Latin American News Now, investigates the Justice Department's secret immunity memo, the strategic use of the Caribbean in foreign policy, why global elites are turning against Trump's war doctrine, and what this means for the future of sovereignty and international law. The Caribbean may no longer be a zone of peace. It's now a testing ground for power, politics, and global control. And that is what we have to understand. So the Washington Post carried an article yesterday in which it suggested that soldiers who struck boats in the Caribbean, struck the speedboats in the Caribbean, will not be prosecuted. They will be exempt from any form of future prosecution. Now, this is to tell us that the war is on, and that Trump is willing to defy, to violate principles of international law and even America's domestic laws and the domestic laws of the Caribbean to effectuate his regime change in Venezuela. So the Caribbean now is caught up in US foreign policy. We are being used as proxy states, proxy countries, as the Ukraine is currently being used as. Now, remember now that this is not about the Ukraine. The war on Russia, this is a war on Russia. Not, and that is what the United States is doing. It's just using the Ukraine as a pretext and to suggest that it is there to protect the Ukraine. But the Ukrainians, they should know that that is not so. That the United States is also there to divvy up the resources of the Ukraine that are in the Ukraine so that they can enrich themselves. All of this is business, And I'm going to present a video very shortly to let you know that the war in Venezuela, all of Wall Street's and all of these military corporations, the Raytheons and all of these people, they're well on their way to stacking their pockets with loads of money. Right? And that is what it's about. It's about economic as well as political control and military control. And that is what you have to understand. This doesn't have to do about you, the ordinary citizen. It has nothing to do with you, right? It has to do with the lining of corporate structures and corporate institutions, because war is a racket, as Smedley Butler said. Okay? Now, the global elites on the global allies are, I should say, against Trump's war doctrine, or they supposedly say they are. But are these global allies of the United States against US violations of international law? I don't think so. I think that they are posturing and that they're not really against it because they are now with Trump and with the United States empire in the Ukraine, they have been in Iraq and Syria, Libya, all of these Western nations, Haiti, all of these Western nations have been on board with the US, and they have violated all of the principles of international law. That is why we are where we are at right now, because Western countries like England and France and Germany, they have allowed the United States to have violated all of these major tenets of international law and domestic laws as well. Okay, so when they're coming now and they are intimating and they are pretending as if they are on the side of international law and they want to protect all the tenets thereof, we know that they are lying, that it is not true. It is not true, because we know that behind the scenes and even openly, in other words, wars that they have supported, that they are on board because they also earn money. They have their corporations there in Europe also that make enormous sums of money out of wars. And that is what we have to understand. Irrespective of the casualty, the US is not concerned about casualty. It's concerned about control and economic wealth that can be accrued from such wars. Very important that you understand that. I'm going to do a video on that shortly so you can understand what is at stake in this impending war against Venezuela. Now, what does this mean for the future of sovereignty and international law? I think that we are no longer sovereign nations. I think that we are beholden to the diktats of the United States, and she can use any pretext, and then we are forced to join her war agenda. And whatever her agenda might be it political, religious, economic, and we know what happens with the IMF. And the IMF is also a part of the military-industrial complex. So everything is the war machine. Everything is about developing, building the war machine of the United States. And countries have to do that. And this is what I'm dare say. China can't do that, even if she wants to do it. Russia can't do that with any other country, even if she wants to do it. And no other country can do it but the US. Yet I'm hearing people challenging me that Russia is doing that, and Russia is doing this, and Russia is a superpower too, and China is also a superpower. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Right? Do you think that if Russia were a superpower, that she would not have forced other nations to do her bidding too? Right? Oh, she's not, because she's not of the ilk of the United States. Okay. Do you remember the Cold War? Do you understand what the Cold War was about? Okay. So we have to re-socialize ourselves, re-educate our minds in terms of what this geopolitical chess game is about, because it's a chess game, right? And the chess game is not about liberating us. Whether you are in Venezuela or you're in Trinidad or in Jamaica or you're in the United States, this geopolitical chess game is about the control of the elites. And the elites, whether they're coming from Japan, they're coming from Russia, they're coming from China, they're coming from wherever they're coming from, what they know, they want to amass the wealth and the control of the resources, of the world's resources, amass it for them and their family, and not for the wider global populace. That is what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. And that is why Trump is now barefacedly suggesting to us that the soldiers who participated in the unlawful, the illegal strikes in which they participated, and in which we saw the unaliving. I have to be careful with my choice of words. And you're not watching the videos. You have to watch the videos if we want truth to be proclaimed. You've just stopped watching the videos. It's almost like a bunch of you just stopped watching the videos. And then afterwards, you crowd around a video. I don't understand what happens here on YouTube. But the fact of the matter is that we're living in some dangerous times where the Caribbean and Latin American region, we find ourselves at the focal point of the war on terror. All right? We are now there, and the war has been taken. We are at the center of the war. Before it was the Middle East, now the Caribbean region and Latin America, by extension, have become the focal point of the war that Trump has brought home, because he said that the enemy is within, and that the enemy from within has to be taken out. Who are Trump's enemies? He says, for now, they are the narco-terrorists, they are the drug traffickers, and they are also the human traffickers. But who controls human trafficking? Who controls drug trafficking? Isn't the US that controls it? Or does she want to be the only preeminent power which would be in control of these nefarious activities? That's the question that you and I have got to ask ourselves. But what it suggests to us that the United States can come and do anything it wants to do in the Caribbean and Latin America, particularly if they are successful with effectuating the regime change agenda that they're now about to achieve and to launch in Venezuela. If there is a successful regime change in Venezuela, I think that our liberties are under threat, and that we would have lost complete sovereignty, as Venezuela would be the exemplar of what or how the United States decides to operate in the Caribbean and Latin American region. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Like the video so the videos can be shared with as many people on the platform. And for those of you who'd like to make monetary contributions, you can send it to my Cash App, the $MZTUCK9. The $MZTUCK9. Thank you so much for joining. Adios.